So, Dr. White took me up on the Christian challenge, and I thank him very, very much for doing so. And I've just briefly watched it once, but I thought I would watch it again and make some comments on it. And again, Dr. White, if you see this video, I really appreciate it. I really do that you took the time to review this. So let's hit play and see what you had to say.
There was a challenge for Christians posted on the web while I was here in Australia, and the fellow who posted it actually had some exchange with Rich and I. I don't know what it's really all about. I can't really figure it out. I've seen things like this before.
Okay, I'm going to pause it there. What it's really about, it's very, very simple. I wasn't looking for explanations. All I was looking for is for someone, a Christian, to say, here's a statement. Do you believe it or not? And if you do believe it, to say it out loud and have it recorded. And then the goal was so that sometime in the future you could hear yourself say this is what you believe. And I was curious to know if it would have any impact on your life, whether hearing yourself repeat that, which I think a lot of Christians would admit are some really weird stuff, right? If it would have any impact at all. And so that was the goal of the challenge.
Um, it's not unique. It seems to be presented in some level of mockery, but leaving that aside,
And again, this was not meant to be mocking. These are things that are in the Holy Text, the Bible. And a gentleman came on and took the challenge. I didn't mock him or ridicule him when he did it. So, uh, I that wasn't my goal to say, "Oh, see, you believe this. How crazy is that?"
basically this atheist says, "Well, I'm giving Christians an opportunity to express their faith." I really doubt that extremely.
Well, not so much to express your faith, but just specific things within the Bible that you may or may not believe. Like Christians differ. Some Christians believe some things in the Bible, other Christians don't. So I was just curious to know how many of these eight Christians believe.
A series of objections.
These are not objections. These are things I pulled out of the Bible and I wrote them down, and I was just curious to see if Christians believe them or not.
To the Christian faith, and they're based upon naturalistic materialism. And so,
Now, that's an assumption. I don't even know if I'm an atheist, but I don't even know if I'm a naturalist. I am open to the idea of a supernatural. I really am. There might be a supernatural. I don't know. So if naturalism, by definition, excludes that possibility, then I guess I'm not a naturalist.
here is a challenge for Christians, and we're supposed to affirm these things. Okay.
No, I'm not asking you to affirm these things. I'm just asking you if you believe it, state it publicly, state it out loud for the record.
Number one, I believe a snake serpent talked, Genesis 3:1. Yes, I do believe that. Because you see, the ability to speak and communicate is not simply a naturalistic evolutionary development. We are made in the image of God. God is able to communicate. We are able to communicate because God desires to communicate with us. The lower animals are not given this same capacity for communication in the normal situation. But what the only thing that could be embarrassing about this is if you actually believe in such things as miracles, that there are rare and unusual times where God, for his purposes, intervenes and suspends natural law. Now, in this particular situation, prior to the fall, we were given very little information concerning the nature of a serpent, for example, or what the capacity of such a creature might be. But the point is, this is a supernatural incident. And I am not embarrassed by believing the supernatural because I believe Jesus rose from the dead. I believe God created the universe. And if he has a reason and a purpose to allow for the natural, normal state of things to be altered so as to bring about a special event, that's God's right. He can do that whenever he chooses to do so for his purposes and in accordance with his character. And so, in the incidence of the fall of man, there was an interaction between the woman and what is called the serpent, and there was communication between them. Now, I don't know the nature of that communication, the sense of how this speech took place or anything else, but yes, there's no question that this took place.
See, now, okay, I really appreciate that answer, but really all you had to say was, yes, I believe this happened. And you spoke for a couple of minutes on why seemingly you're not foolish to do so because you believe in miracles. But if I would have said, if the number one thing on that list, on that challenge would have been, I believe God is love, I wonder if you would have expounded so much. Maybe you would have. I don't know. I really don't know. But it seems like you realize that this is something hard to believe, and so you needed to explain it more.
And unless you're a rabid fundamentalist, naturalistic materialist, which most atheists are, even though they've never really thought through how they could possibly defend that, it's just an assumption, it's a presupposition on their part.
I would agree. It's a presupposition, and I think you would agree that you have presuppositions as well. And I just think the way a lot of atheists view Christian presuppositions is taking it one presupposition too far to a complex deity, which is not necessary.
Then you wouldn't have any objection to that. Number two, I believe a man lived in the belly of a great fish for 3 days, Jonah 1:17. Well, again, that's quite possible. Actually, though, Jonah said he went down into Sheol, which is the grave. And so there would be a closer parallel, because remember, Jesus used Jonah as, talked about the sign of Jonah. There would be a closer parallel if, in fact, Jonah died and was resurrected when he was expelled up onto the beach, because then you'd have a direct parallel to what happens in regards to Jesus, who dies, is buried, and rises again. So it's possible that that happened, or it's just as possible, if not more likely, that something else happened in that instance, that you actually had a resurrection, which becomes then a paradigm, a prophetic type.
I find it interesting that you use the word possible and likely. So you're saying it's possible that he was in a fish for belly of a fish for 3 days, but it's more likely or more possible that it's showing a resurrection of sorts. Dr. White, isn't it more likely that none of that happened at all, and someone just wrote that it did?
That is then fulfilled in Jesus. So, yeah, I'm definitely a supernaturalist. The Bible doesn't know anything about naturalistic materialists other than to say that they're foolish. Number three, I believe.
Now, except to say that they are foolish, with sincerity, that sounds a little mocking, something that I'm trying hard not to do, okay? And when I hear Christians say stuff like that, it sounds mocking to the atheist. So please maybe refrain from, well, never mind. I won't give you advice.
That Jesus ordered the stoning rebellious children. Now, a number of people that I saw online criticized this for saying, well, Jesus wasn't on earth yet. What are you talking about? I don't really have any problem with putting it this way, as long as what's being understood on the part of the author.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Dr. White. I don't know. I've gotten flack from Christians saying, no, you can't put Jesus in the Old Testament. If you believe in the concept of the Trinity, then the very words of Jesus are the very words of God, and the very words of God are the very words of Jesus. You should have no problem as a Christian substituting Jesus for Yahweh or Jesus for God in the Old Testament. And I thank you so much, Dr. White, for being on my side on that one.
Is that Jesus pre-existed as the eternal Son of God, and that he, in perfect union with the Father, is the one who gave us the law. He's involved with creation. As long as you're a Trinitarian, then there's no problem looking at this. But it also, sort of begs the question why you're an atheist if you also accept that Jesus had the authority to do these things and he rose from the dead.
I am just doing an internal critique, Dr. White, and I'm entering the worldview of those who do believe in the concept of the Trinity. So that is what I'm doing here when I wrote the challenge using Jesus instead of Yahweh or God.
You might want to think about what that might mean for you. But I believe that Jesus ordered the stoning of rebellious children, Deuteronomy 21:18 through 21. Well, I did a whole series on the Holiness Code, which included this text and numerous other very difficult texts from the Old Testament law. And I pointed out in that instance that you're not talking about a little 7-year-old here. You would be talking about a later teenager into early adult years. You'd be talking about someone who is a rebel against God's law, who is...
Question for you, Dr. White. Would it affect you if it was talking about a 7-year-old? How would that change anything? And if your answer is it wouldn't change anything, then why are you talking about it now?
Breaking God's law and could very obviously be one of those who would then bring about the shedding of blood, innocent blood. There's a great deal of concern in the law concerning that particular issue, making atonement for the shedding of innocent blood, etc., etc. And so this is simply a recognition that the ones who would have the first indication of such a rebellious person that could bring blood guiltiness upon the covenant people would probably be the ones who know the individual best, and that would be the parents. And so it is a call for parents to look first and foremost to the good of the holy people of God, and hence to recognize the tremendous sinfulness of the shedding of innocent blood, violence in the land, whatever else it might be that brings blood guiltiness upon the people. And that then connects this with number 7.
Before we go to number 7, again, why do you feel the need to explain this so much? If this would have been a verse like, the Lord will take your burdens away and give you comfort, would you have been expounding so much? So it goes to the point of you realize this sounds bad and you need to explain it. Is that what's going on?
I believe that Jesus ordered that a husband should be the first one to throw a stone at his wife if she leads him away from belief, Deuteronomy 13:6 through 10. Again, another text that I preached upon in the Holiness Code series, where the specific statement was made that even if it is the wife of your bosom, the closest friend that you have, if anyone amongst the covenant people of God secretly is seeking to promulgate idolatry and rebellion amongst the people, that you cannot keep this secret. You cannot keep this private. You are to testify against them before the elders, and that they are to be purged from the people. Again, these are laws for God's covenant people. These are laws for people who...
These are laws for God's covenant people. I just want to see if you agree with one thing, Dr. White, that any law that God gives has a moral component. I'm curious to know if you would agree with that statement. Entering, again, doing an internal critique, going into your worldview, whether it's a civil law or not, does every law uttered by your God have a moral component?
Who, as a nation, have covenanted with God to be his holy people. There are no people like this in the sense of a nation today. This is where the issue of forms of theonomy come in.
But if you agree with me that everything that God says has a moral component, and if morality is not subjective, then isn't the embracing of the covenant, old and new covenants, embracing relative morality?
Very high view of God's law and its relevance today, but I also recognize that the penology that was prescribed was a penology given to a covenant people and was to be undertaken by a covenant people, a holy people before God. And hence, if you do not have that today, that the idea of bringing the exact same punishments to bear, when you no longer have a priest, you no longer have one who's actually representing God as far as seeking to promote his glory and his name, who is in covenant with God. When you no longer have that situation, then the issue of the penology, that is, the penalties that are to be prescribed, becomes quite problematic. And so, number 3 and 7 are both indications of the incredible importance that was attached to fidelity and faithfulness amongst the people of God in the law of God, which, of course, the people of God never lived up to. Uh, that's why there had to be a new covenant. That's why Jeremiah chapter 31 is there. That's why there had to be an internal change. The external simply was not sufficient in any way. Number 4, I believe Jesus said that the Israelites could take virgin women for themselves and give 32 virgin women to Jesus. Now, there's some really serious confusion on the part of the author in much of this. What is referred to in Numbers chapter 31, there's a couple things there. The idea of giving virgin women to Jesus, it's just so absurd that it's hard to even know how to interact with it. But we'll go down to Numbers 31:31. Well, that doesn't make any sense, does it? I'm sorry. Is there a
What I find really, really interesting here, Dr. White, is that when you read my statement, you didn't go to, oh, this is not in the Bible. You were expecting to find something in Numbers 31 that you could now interpret. And now listen to what you're about to say next.
is there an error in the yeah, the reference isn't even correct. That's
No, the reference is correct. All you would have needed to do is read down to the verses 40. Let me read it out for you. Um, They gave 675 sheep to the Lord. The soldiers got donkeys. They gave 61 donkeys to the Lord. The soldiers got 16,000 women. Then they gave 32 women to the Lord. This is verse 40, which I referenced. Then they gave women to the Lord, just like they gave donkeys to the Lord and cattle to the Lord. So it was there. You just didn't read far enough down.
that's interesting. Um, Numbers 31:31, yeah, has absolutely nothing to do with any of that at all.
Incorrect.
Well, that's nice. Fundamentally, the issue was that when the Israelites took a enemy nation, that they were allowed to take certain of the women who had not known men. And this, of course, had to do with the military situation that existed in the day. And what is often missed by these folks, and I don't even have a clue what the 32 virgin women of Jesus thing is. Since you can't even get the text right, then it's obviously just a flight of fancy imagination. But
I got the text right.
the normal objection is to the idea of the raping of slave women, et cetera, et cetera. What's normally missed, and again, if you go to Sermon Audio, look up the Holiness Code in the sermon series that I did at PRBC, and look these texts up. I expand upon these things more fully. But what you need to understand is, if there was not provision made for these women, once the husbands had either died in battle or been executed, they would be left with no visible means of support in a destroyed area, and basically it was a condemnation to death. This was actually a mechanism whereby life could be saved. We don't view it that way today because we live in very different situations than they did back then, but fundamentally this was a mechanism that would allow for the saving of life and the continuation of individual.
Another mechanism of saving life is maybe not kill them all in the first place.
And the society, uh, with still very often a real concern concerning the bringing in of idolatry and the temptation to foreign idols. That was all that frequently gets mixed in as well in the situation. But there were a number of texts that we dealt with that, from a modern perspective, looked so very strange. But from the ancient perspective, made perfect sense in the sense that they were actually saving people alive. Again, have no.
Okay, but the point still remains, and it's Numbers 31, verse 40, where it specifically says, the challenge was for to see if you could say out loud, and it sounds horrible, I think, that Jesus got, or God got, 32 virgin women for himself. Sounds a little weird, doesn't it?
The idea with the 32 virgin women that Jesus says, because the text reference isn't even right.
No, it is right.
Um,
You just had to
I
read it
believe
from
Jesus
farther.
sanctioned abortion, killing the unborn, if an unfaithful wife was pregnant. Numbers 5:19-21. Again, the author has no clue.
Okay, this is the one that bothers Christians the most that in my experience. But let's listen on.
How to read the Old Testament or what's going on. That's actually the text concerning the faithfulness test. It has nothing to do with abortion.
Has nothing to do with abortion. Look up the definition of abortion. Abortion is the deliberate killing of the unborn.
It has nothing to do with the murder of unborn children. It has to do with a wife who is suspicious and a
No, it has to do with a husband who's suspicious.
test, the willingness on her part to undergo this test and to
That is true.
make a vow
That is
that
true.
she has not been unfaithful to her covenant.
That is
Has
true.
zippity dippity doo dah to do with abortion.
This is where I disagree. Because if it has zippity zippity do nothing to do with abortion, then basically what you're saying is your God has made an empty threat. I encourage every Christian listening to this right now to go read it for yourself. And read it in the easy to read version where they don't use the word thigh and like the King James does. We have a man suspects his woman of cheating, his wife of cheating on him. So he takes his wife to the priest. God says to the priest, this is how you should handle it. You make the woman swear that she has not cheated on her husband, but and that she promises to drink this special drink. If she lies and says that she has not cheated on her husband and she drinks the special drink, if she is pregnant, the baby in her will die. If she's been lying. If she has been lying, then nothing wrong will happen. So it's a threat. God is telling the priest to threaten this woman that if you do not tell the truth here, and if you're pregnant, the baby is going to die. And that's clearly what I say in my challenge, that if the unfaithful wife is pregnant and she drinks of that water, the baby will die. The unborn baby will die, and that unborn baby dying is called abortion.
If you want anything in the law that has to do with that, look at the striking of the woman who's pregnant. What happens if stillbirth or if the baby's born healthy, etc., etc.
And here's another point. Why would you draw the line that God would never say something like that or do something like that when he killed the unborn in the flood? Unless one is willing to say there was no pregnant women who drowned during the flood. And abortion is the killing of the unborn. The flood killed pregnant women, therefore the flood killed the unborn. So there's precedent in your worldview. So why would you find or maybe you don't, but why would you find the killing of the unborn in this situation as, no, that's just crazy? But at the same time said God's done it before in the flood.
But this is just a complete faceplant on the part of the atheist in ignorance of the Old Testament text.
Again, I encourage everyone to go to BibleGateway.com, go to the easy to read version, and read that passage for yourself. It even says baby will die in the womb.
It's very, very common. Number 6, I believe that many dead people came out of the graves when Jesus died. Matthew 27:52. Once again, yes, I do. So, um, Jesus rose from the dead. There was a resurrection of saints that were known to the people in Jerusalem at that time period. It was obviously very partial. It was simply emblematic of the resurrection itself that was taking place. There is no expansion upon its meaning. But once again, a Christian who believes Jesus rose from the dead is in a rather odd situation to say, well, Jesus can rise from the dead, but nobody else can. Again, only the fundamentalist, naturalistic materialist would have any issue with this or think that it's
One interesting point to make here is that it seems like in that time, maybe rising from the dead wasn't that unique, since so many people did it.
embarrassing or something like that. It's recorded for us. No special meaning is attached to it outside of it being one of the accompanying signs of the death of Christ, the tearing of the veil in the temple, etc., etc. We already looked at number 7. Finally, number 8, I believe that Jesus stopped Abraham from sacrificing his son, but didn't stop Jephthah from sacrificing his daughter. Two things. Obviously shows an extremely shallow, disrespectful view of what happens in regards to Abraham and Isaac. The fact that this becomes, I think, one of the key prophetic pictures of what is going to be happening in the giving of Jesus himself voluntarily upon Calvary's cross. What happens with Jephthah, interestingly enough, in our regular reading of the Old Testament scriptures, that was the text we read a week ago Sunday night.
I must say it's pretty amazing that I'm picking all the the passages that you have talked about or preached about, or even recently. Maybe it's God.
At our church, as we're working through, right now we're in Judges,
Sorry, I didn't mean to mock there.
and I read that
Just a
specific
big
text just a
coincidence.
few weeks ago, as I said. And um, in that context, there's two major understandings as to what took place in regard to Jephthah's daughter. The one way to understand devoted to destruction is that she was killed. Um, exactly how is not noted, but certainly devoted to destruction can mean that, and that is a possibility. Judges gives us a real insight into God working with a people who, while they possess the Old Testament law, clearly are operating on an extremely low level of ethics and morality, and constantly falling into sin and slavery, and then raising up judges that deliver the people. But very early on, it's a very clear indication that just simply being close to Moses and Joshua chronologically, as far as generations is concerned, does not mean that you're close to them in an understanding of the things of God and really what will come out much more in the prophets. It is a sad picture of the reality of the necessity of the new covenant, the necessity of an inward change, because the people of Israel clearly are not inwardly changed, and so they're constantly in this cycle of apostasy and rebellion and then deliverance. The other option, however, what is interesting is that Jephthah's daughter, and then the establishment of this mourning for Jephthah's daughter, is in reference to what? To her virginity. And so it is just as possible that what happened with Jephthah's daughter is that she remained unmarried. That is, that she remained a virgin, did not have children. Not having children was considered a tremendous burden. And so that the devotion of her was to a life of celibacy and service to God, not to her destruction. Now, again, at the time of the judges, could have gone either direction. We just simply are not told. What is mourned is her virginity and not having children. So that's a possibility. But the fact is, we don't know. And there is no connection, of course, logically, rationally, biblically, meaningfully, between the offering of Isaac and the issue of Jephthah at all. Why even put the two of them together? Can't even begin to say.
I put the two together because here we have a situation where Abraham was about to sacrifice Isaac, and God says, "No, stop." Then we have another situation where Jephthah says to God, "I promise I will sacrifice the first thing that comes out of my house if you help me win this war, this battle." And then his daughter comes out of the house, and so now he has to sacrifice her. And God didn't say, "No, no, 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 no. It's okay. You don't have to do it." Like, God's silent there. He wasn't silent with Isaac and Abraham, but he's silent with Jephthah and his daughter.
So this kind of stuff, it does make you wonder what people are trying to accomplish with this kind of thing. It's hard to say. Um,
I'll tell you exactly what I'm trying to accomplish. And I said this earlier, and I'll finish with this. I'm trying to accomplish, I would love to Christians own their beliefs, own it, even the bad stuff. And I think you would agree with me, Dr. White. And so I'm giving Christians the opportunity to take these difficult verses in the Bible without explanation, just say, "Yes, I believe this." And if you don't believe it, then say, "Oh, no, I don't believe this." And then we can talk about why you don't believe it later. But my main purpose here was to see what you do believe as a Christian of this list of 8. And again, I can't tell you how happy I am that you see nothing wrong with me inserting Jesus in the Old Testament. I'm going to use you now as, well, Dr. White says it's okay, so why can't I do it? So again, I thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I'm curious to know what would have happened if I did a list of 8 things that are all the good, warm, fuzzy stuff in the Bible, if you would have expounded so much, if you would have needed to look at the context as much, if I talked about verses of, from the Psalms or Proverbs or New Testament that talk about love and compassion and comfort in the time of need. Maybe you would have. I don't know. But again, thank you so much, Dr. White, for your time. And maybe if you want to talk to me directly face to face, I invite you to do that as well.